All right. Hey, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. So, joining the podcast today is Mr. Daniel Kraus, here to discuss his latest novel, Angel Down. Before we get into the book, here's some background on Mr. Kraus, because if you're recognizing the name, yes, it is that Daniel Kraus. So, from his website, danielkraus.com, quote, Daniel Kraus is a New York Times best-selling writer of novels, TV, and film. His latest novel, Whale Fall, received a front cover review in the New York Times Book Review, won the Alex Award, was an LA Times Book Prize finalist, and was a Best Book of 2023 from NPR, the New York Times, Amazon, Chicago Tribune, and more. With Guillermo del Toro, he co-authored The Shape of Water, based on the same idea the two created for the Oscar-winning film. Also with del Toro, Kraus authored Troll Hunters, which was adapted into the Emmy-winning Netflix series. My daughter loved Troll Hunters, by the way. He co-wrote The Living Dead and Pay the Piper with legendary filmmaker George A. Romero. Kraus's The Death and Life of Zebulon Finch was named one of Entertainment Weekly's top 10 books of the year. Kraus has won the Bram Stoker Award, Scribe Award, two Odyssey Awards for both Rotters and Scowler, and has appeared multiple times as Library Guild selections, YAL Essay, Best Fiction for Young Adults, and more. Kraus's work has been translated into over 20 languages. He lives with his wife in Chicago, and you can visit him at danielkraus.com, end quote. Okay, and now I'm just going to cut over to the book. Okay, and that's Angel Down, also from Mr. Kraus's website. So, quote, the critically acclaimed author of the crazily enjoyable, this is the New York Times, Whale Fall, returns with an immersive cinematic novel about five World War I soldiers who stumble upon a fallen angel that could hold the key to ending the war. Private Cyril Bagger has managed to survive the unspeakable horrors of the Great War through his wits and deception, swindling fellow soldiers at every opportunity. But his survival instincts are put to the ultimate test when he and four other grunts are given a deadly mission: venture into the perilous no man's land to euthanize a wounded comrade. What they find amid the ruined battlefield, however, is not a man in need of mercy, but a fallen angel, seemingly struck down by artillery fire. This celestial being may hold the key to ending the brutal conflict, but only if the soldiers can suppress their individual desires and work together. As jealousy, greed, and paranoia take hold, the group is torn apart by their inner demons, threatening to turn their angelic encounter into a descent into hell. Angel Down plunges you into the heart of World War I and weaves a polyphonic tale of survival, supernatural wonder, and moral conflict. End quote. Okay, so this is me now. Angel Down was one hell of a ride. So, because of the Meuse-Argonne setting for this story, I could really visualize the World War I scenery with the trenches, the mud, and the horror all around. But then with the characters and the story, this was some vivid writing. I don't want to give too much away to the listeners, but when Major General Rice gets what he wants, I could see that happening very clearly in my mind. And damn, that was really good. Um, and before we get too deep, for the sticklers out there, no, there was no Company P in the Army Table of Organization. There was no 43rd Division in the AEF, but there was a 43rd Division in World War II. So there you go. Now, you sticklers for the details, folks, let's get over it. Let's enjoy the hell out of the fact that a New York Times best-selling author chose the Meuse-Argonne as the setting for his latest novel. Again, this is a great book. I saw it in my head as a film, and I hope to God it turns into one. Um, so, Mr. Daniel Kraus, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very happy to be here. Did want to say one thing. In your opening, a few times you got garbled and I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm
As
so
long
sorry.
as long as it's working for you, it's fine because I know the synopsis.
Yeah.
But if it happens again, I look confused. I'm waiting for you to unscramble.
Okay,
But
gotcha, gotcha. No
you're
worries.
okay at
Yeah,
the moment.
I gotta notice that my connection was
No, you're not
unstable.
okay at the moment.
Hopefully it works out. All right. So, Mr. Kraus, if we could, I'd like to start with just a couple of questions about you as a writer. How long have you been a writer, and how did writing begin for you?
Well, professionally, I think I published my first book in 2011, I think. So that's about, I don't know, 16, 17 years, something like that.
Mhm.
But I've been writing since about first grade, really. And I never really have stopped. I started doing short, like little stories with my friends about stuff. But but I missed it, and I wanted to get back to it. So around my late 20s, I turned back towards writing, which is I always wanted to be a novelist when I was a little kid. So I came back to that, and and part of the reason, I mean, I've always been a big reader and writer, but I also just sort of like working alone. That sounds antisocial, but I also just I like being alone in a room and working, and I've always I mean, I enjoy talking to people too, but I I I do like really treasure alone time, and I like just sort of being alone with ideas and working on them. In many ways, I work the same way as I did as a kid, where I sort of work on my stuff alone, and I write for the same reasons too, which is not really. And you have to sort of publicize or publish to make a living and all that stuff,
Right.
but I feel the same writing it, that I just feel like I'm writing it because it's fun and it's interesting to me, and um, showing it to other people, which is something I never did when I was a teenager, is still it's something I enjoy doing, but it's not the central part. It's still, to me, it's still just about the writing and creating, and it's just fun for me, first of all.
Oh, very cool. I apologize. Our internet connection, of course, like of all nights,
Uh-huh.
now's the night it's going to choose to be unstable. I heard you when you were talking about
Okay.
you started writing in the first grade, and then I missed it about to where you were saying, like it's fun for you. So if you just want to like
I'll try. Yeah.
summarize, I'm sorry.
No, no, it's fine. Yeah, so when I was a kid, I would very rarely show anyone what I was writing. It didn't even occur to me really, and that I think really trained me well, in the sense that that's still kind of where I'm at, as I'm
Yeah.
writing as I like writing, and I'm not writing in order to please somebody or please the newspapers or the review critics or anything like that. It's still coming from a very natural, organic place where I just do it because I like the experience of it.
And I understand what you're saying about like you're not antisocial per se, like, but like it's writing is something that you ultimately like I think you have to do it by yourself. And I remember reading Franz Kafka. His fiance said that she wanted to be in the room with him when he was writing, and he was like, "Oh my God, absolutely not! Like I have to be alone." And I was like,
Yeah,
I get it. Like I totally get it. I mean, when I do these podcast episodes and stuff, like I do it best when I'm in a room by myself, and have
yeah,
the
and
time.
for me, it's like I've also I'm fine writing on planes and airports and stuff, so I don't have to be like physically alone,
Mhm.
but it's but sort of mentally alone. Like I really enjoy that.
Wow, okay. Excellent. You do you have like a consistent like theme in your works? Like is there like a are you trying to like pass a specific lesson to be learned or gleaned, or like or are you just like you said, like I know you're writing for yourself and like for what you
Yeah,
like. But are you also like trying to like maybe get a little message across or anything like that?
yeah, always. I don't know that it's a. I don't know if there's a major through line through my books. Angel Down is my 20, looks like 25th book. Um, so I don't know that like I very purposely try to change what I'm doing all the time. Like I try to write in my goal is to write in every genre, and I've written in most of them at this point. And I every time I write now, I sit down to write a new book. I try to create new problems for myself so that I don't ever write the same type of book, whether that's changing the genre or the perspective or the point of view or doing something new with the language. You know, Angel
Mhm.
Down's a great example of that. Of just trying to structurally do something that I've never done before. Um, so, sort of, at least from like the surface, there's not many similarities between my books. I think a lot of
Mhm.
people you can pinpoint them pretty well. They do this kind of thing or that kind of thing. With me, I think it's a bigger gamble. Like you don't know what you're going to get from me necessarily, and that can be a bad thing. Like sometimes my readers won't have any idea what I'm doing, and they'll pick something up. They'll be like, "Well, this isn't like the last one."
Yep.
But it's a high risk reward too. Like I will lose people sometimes, but sometimes I'll gain a bunch of new people. But it keeps me interested to keep changing focus.
So it's interesting you bring that up. I find that admirable because in Angel Down, I have to say like your structure, like at first it like kind of got me like
Yeah,
dude, there's no like there's little punctuation here. There's no capital letters, in the beginning of the paragraphs. But I was like, but after a while, like it's like, all right, like I
yeah,
there's definitely a flow here and I see it. And then of course, like, the story sucked me in and it's like, yeah, who cares about capital letters, man? We're good to
right.
go. So um something that you said, I I I have to admit, I forget where I read it, but like you said, and I find this incredible, like you've never had writer's block. So something that I would like to ask for myself and
Yeah.
for other writers who might be listening out there, like what's your process like when you're writing? Do you write in short stints or do you do it in like these like great stretches where you just work for hours or days on end?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's mostly accurate. I think I had the normal type of writer's problems up through my third book. So that would have been like 2013 or so, where I did feel like I had writer's block or just some sort of more common, some sort of barrier that would sometimes pop up and I couldn't get into it or I couldn't figure out where I was going or just something else was making me not want to write. Um, there's a number of things that might have happened at that point because it was just sort of it was a troubled time of my life. Um, I think in some ways got properly medicated. I think that's like genuinely one of the reasons. I think,
Okay.
um, but also just kind of turned over a new leaf. And starting with my fourth book, the words haven't stopped since. Like somehow I got into some sort of the faucet was opened. I don't really know exactly how to put it. Um, and I have since then worked sort of nonstop. That's how I've written crazy amounts of books.
Yeah.
I think I work like I'm checking in at the factory. I definitely don't work in small bursts, though I can.
Mhm.
Uh, I I wake up and I go right to work. I take a shower and go right to work, and I
Wow.
work basically full 8 hour days. These days, once I get to like maybe 2 p.m., I've got a whole bunch of business stuff I have to do. So I spend the last few hours answering emails and answering publisher requests. And uh, so it's not as quite as pure writing as it used to be, where I used to just write 9 to 5.
Yep.
Now I've just got too many other things I have to deal with. But it's still a lot of writing. And it's still what I want to be doing. These days, I take off Sundays, but I still write 6 days a week, um, all day, and I love it. I still just really, really love it. And if I have to go a couple days without writing for some reason or another, I really feel it, and I'm less happy.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, j just as far as like doing a podcast, like I started writing like in my teens and stuff, and I've always enjoyed it. And I've noticed like when I'm unhappy, it's like, well, it's because you haven't had like an outlet
Sure.
for
Yeah.
it. So that's, oh, I'd love to hear it, and I'd love for other folks to hear it too, because it could like inspire them
Yeah. Good.
to work. So Angel Down. So what got you interested in writing a story like set in the World War One battlefield of the Meuse-Argonne?
Yeah. So yeah, I was not much of a history buff until maybe my, let's see, fifth book, I think. And it was this book called The Death and Life of Zebulon Finch, a very, very giant sort of historical epic. And so I, to this day, I've never written anything, and hopefully never will again, that required so much research. Just it's like a 1,500 page epic. It was huge. And there was a section of that, just a small section, but maybe I don't know, 70 page or so section that took place in World War One. And that was just by dint of like that's sort of historically what was going on during that period. My character was sort of everywhere. He's almost like a Forrest Gump type character where
Okay.
he's present at all these, much darker than Forrest Gump. But and I had a section set in World War One. And I during the research for that, which was not quite as significant as it was for Angel Down, and it was in the midst of all these other kind of research because that book took place over 100 years. Uh, I really kind of fell in love with the stories of World War One, and although that book went on to cover other conflicts, and I've written about many different time periods, I do historical fiction quite a bit these days. There's been a few periods that have fascinated me more than World War One, and I have as I've been doing interviews for this book, I've tried to figure out what it is about that war that has captured me so much, and I think it's the futility of it. I think it's there's something. I think from an artist perspective, there's something almost absurd about it, like the these your battle lines that you're battling over this like parcel of land that is so destroyed that no one would ever want it, and yet you're just throwing lives at it. And it seems at points, and I'm sure, and in the larger view of things, I sort of understand what's happening, but from the ground level perspective, it seems so pointless for so long. Um, it just seems like you're just throwing people into the grinder day after day after day for what appears to be nothing, what appears just to be a muddy field of craters.
Yep.
And I think that plus the fact of just all this new technology, the sort of weapons that were being faced at soldiers who were still dressed as soldiers had been up to that point. Like they just didn't have any real kind of armor, and the way that the battle tactics had not caught up to the technology.
Right.
Uh, and my theory, or sort of my thesis maybe of the book, is sort of that the technology of World War One is sort of created the next however many years that we're still ongoing now of um, war and violence and this sort of cycle of killing that once you mechanize it almost as like a factory. Like there's people who profit from war and reasons war beyond the more obvious ones that war is perpetuated. And I feel like that engine began to function in World War One.
Yeah. And almost like feed itself. Like
Yeah,
it's this
exactly.
machine that like just keeps on going and chewing up people. Like um it's funny, like while I was at work today, like I'm a teacher, so I had an off block. So I was watching a short clip of the newest version of All Quiet on the Western
Yeah,
Front.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
I was watching them. It's the scene when the French tanks come out of the mist, and they're and it's funny, like I was struck by a similar feeling of like I was looking at the soldiers and the German soldiers and like the devastated ground and the barbed wire and the bodies hanging on the barbed wire, and I was like why? Like, why are you fighting over this? Like, what is the point of all of this? And he can even some of the
Yeah.
soldiers, I think that the director worked it in where they're like looking at each other and the question in their eyes is like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? And where,
Yeah.
it's also like
And
not the time to be asking that question because you're in an incredible amount of danger right now. So you need
yeah,
to,
right. The time to ask that question is in the past at that point.
yeah, yes,
And you're right, when the tanks come out of the mist, that's kind of what I'm talking about, is this sudden onslaught of technology where, in previous wars, a lot of the previous wars, what would be coming out of that mist would be other humans. And you
right,
sort of understand those and can deal with them. And I think a lot of it, in addition to what I've said until now, there was something when you're dealing with other soldiers that you're fighting and it's human to human, you understand the stakes. Like,
mhm,
you understand what it's like to kill somebody because you're using your bare hands or something close to it.
sure,
Once you get far away from that and suddenly you're shooting from miles away or you're in a tank or you're operating a drone,
yep,
the the killing I can see how it could start to feel like less of an act, and that you could still go to bed peacefully at night because you just hit a button from another country or whatever, and you never had to really see any blood or feel what it meant. And so I think that's another thing that began to happen with the technology of World War One.
right, right. So one thing I noticed in Angel Down right away was your story is remarkably researched. I mean, Bois de Fay, Mr. Kraus. Like, I mean, like there's very few other people who know like the Bois de Fay. Which for you folks who may not be aware, like Bois de Fay is a section of wood in the Meuse region, and it's called Bois de Fay in French. It means fairy wood. It very much was not fairy wood in 1918. So one thing I wanted to ask you was what resources did you use to like build out these incredibly accurate details of your story? And have you ever been out there to that part of France?
Resources, yeah, this is one question where I wish I did have my books here, because it was just a lot of books. Obviously, I always start really broadly.
Hmm.
So I'll start with books and documentaries, sort of on the war in general.
Hmm.
And so I started with this book, and I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't. It's a very thick one volume, um, maybe like 800 pages or so,
Okay.
uh, sort of history overview of the war.
Okay. Okay.
If you want, I can give you the title later. It's
Sure.
just
Sure.
it has a very generic title, like World War One or something like that, or the Great War or something like that. And then I would drill further down, you know, and as I drilled, would start to try to figure out where I'm going to set this, what time period I'm going to set this, what exact location I'm going to set this. Um, and as I started to find those paths, that would lead toward what books I would read next, all the way down until we got to the point where, well, what kind of flamethrower does this guy have? And
Yeah.
then I would get a book on flamethrowers of World War One. So it would get down to the point where you're just looking at individual items. Um, and in there are diaries and memoirs and all sorts of things. Um, I'm sure I watched some fiction films too, like all the versions of All Quiet and some great contemporaneous films from the era. Some of them German, some of them French. You've seen Jacques.
I actually have to say I
Okay,
haven't.
that's fine. That's fine. There's two versions of the first one. It's a French film. They're both really, really good. But they're shot in 1919. So what's wild about these movies is they're being shot in existing trenches by soldiers who fought in the war, wearing their actual uniforms. So it's like you can't get more realistic in some degrees because you're literally there where the battlefields are still there.
Wow.
Um, so even though those are fiction films, there were still things to glean from them because they're so, um, to some degree, they're accurate. There's fanciful elements too. Uh, as far as having been there, no, it's one of my greatest regrets because I've wanted to see the battlefields, particularly in France, since I wrote Zebulon Finch back in 2013 or whatever, and I just have not been to. Have I been to Europe since then? Probably, but I haven't been to France. I haven't been to really anywhere where there would have been World War I battlefields. But this really lit a fire under me again, and it's just like it's at the top of my list. I'm assuming you've been there.
Yes, and this is probably completely inappropriate for our show, but like this is the point where I'm gonna say like my friend and I do tours every summer, and
Yeah.
you can join us because
Okay, I'll
a
let you
hell,
know.
it's a hell of a great time.
Now, where do you tour?
We go specifically to the Meuse-Argonne region where the
No
Americans
way.
were. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be in touch.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like it's a super cool time. And next year we're going to be doing it I think like we're going to be doing a lot of walking, so you'll definitely
Mhm.
get to know the area. So yeah, very
Yeah,
very cool.
let's stay in touch.
Yeah. But I love this like about watching the movies and like really doing the research because like it really shows and like I was not trying to sharpshoot your book, but it was really cool to be like holy shit, that's the Bois de Fay. Like I know exactly where
Yeah,
that is, you know? So amazing. Now the story, five American doughboys are tasked with the mercy killing of what they think is another wounded soldier. Yet they find a kind of fallen angel that they must then protect. Without giving too much away, who is this being and what does she represent to the five doughboys?
yeah. Well, that's a tough one not to not spoil
Yeah,
because
sorry.
that's sort of no. I'll give it a go because that's sort of the crux of the book is
Yeah.
what is this being? You're seeing the story through the eyes of Bagger, so Private Bagger, um, and and when he and Arno, another soldier, find the angel sort of hung up on barbed wire, she's described as this beautiful but very kind of plain woman wearing a very specific kind of cloak and dress. Um, but as the story wears on, you begin to get hints that maybe the other soldiers aren't seeing her the same way, and that maybe she is how she's being perceived is part of what the individual soldiers need to see from her, like what they want to see, what kind of force would make them want to protect her.
Yeah.
So she's kind of to some degree what you make of her, um, but in most senses, and being vague on purpose,
Yeah.
but in most senses, it's who would they want to protect? Who would each of these five men want to protect?
Awesome.
Unfortunately, along with that comes how would these men decide if they've got a miraculous being on their hands? How might they use this miraculous being to their own devices? Because, as you said in the setup, if you've got this, what appears to be an angel, and you've seen it do a couple miracles in front of your own eyes, well, she might be able to do big miracles. She might be able to stop the war. She might be able to do all sorts of amazing things. And that should be a very short book. That they just take her to the army headquarters, and then the war's over and everything's great.
Yep.
But my perspective on it is that's not what would happen. I think a lot of people, if they hear the premise of the book, would kind of think these men have this sort of wonderful, um, almost holy experience and are changed for the better. And it's actually the opposite, where because they have this valuable object in a way, all their true natures come out. Like the light of the angel exposes for who they really are, and they all want something for them. And it's because they have these differing wants that they begin to tear each other apart. And with this sort of holy encounter, becomes almost um, an, something that sends them to hell, like their own personal hell, where they each are going to fight tooth and nail for what they want.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And it's all when you boil down to it, it's all very, very human. It's like I looked at this and was like, yeah, man, that's how these folks would have reacted. You know, like that's how people would have reacted to this situation, like being, thrust before them.
Right.
Um,
The angel is almost like what in crime films they would call MacGuffin. So it's this catalyst that the book in some ways isn't about the angel. The book is like the angel could have almost been anything, like just something that makes the soldiers show their true colors, and this is what it happens to be.
awesome. Can you just, again, briefly, without giving too much away, can you briefly describe or introduce us to some of the characters in Angel Down? You've mentioned Cyril Bagger,
Yeah.
Arno. Can you tell us just a little bit more
Right.
about?
So the book begins. The conception of the book began with Bagger, Cyril Bagger, who is our main character, and he's essentially. I wanted to start with somebody who had a place to go. So I wanted to make him a sort of unsavory character. One thing I'm really not interested in my books is presenting um, perfect heroic characters. Quite the opposite. I like to see how much I can get away with a character and make the reader still root for them. Like how many bad things can they do, and I can still get the reader to like them? Because for me, that's an interesting challenge. I've said in many interviews I've never had any interest in good versus evil. What I'm really interested in is bad versus worse. Like where how bad I can make a character without losing the reader is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
So Bagger, he comes in and he's essentially a full time gambler and a cheating gambler, um, and that's how he's making his way through the war too. he's uh, he's taking everything from his fellow soldiers through gambling and trickery and staying out of the line of fire by digging latrines, and there's no reason to like this guy, and yet there's something sort of appealing about him. Like there's you can't help but sort of be amused by the guy, even though he's kind of a terrible soldier by all accounts, a terrible soldier. Um, and so when I was devising the other four soldiers, I didn't start from characters. I started with the thought, the question of what are the different ways men could exploit the angel, and then I built the characters around these different ways.
Wow.
So you've got Popkin, who's this big kind of uncouth oaf, big and strong, but dumb and mean. And there's a certain way he wants to exploit the angel, and then you have someone like Goodspeed, who's um, very smart and conniving and sells. He'll skulk over to the German side and sell trinkets to the soldiers. And um, I think the most damning detail about Goodspeed is that he's impeccably clean. Like
Yes.
he's the only one in the entire army who's like clothes don't have any mud on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes on from there. So you have these five characters who are purposely very different and who all want something different for themselves and for the angel.
My last question here was about Cyril Bagger, the main character, and who is he? I mean, you've described him, but um, that's amazing that you're really taking a conscious effort, like you said, to go from bad to worse, and um, because he is it like to me, as the book starts, it's like, all right, he's your typical bad boy, he's your kind of your shitbird in the army, but then it's oh my God, man, are you gonna get any better here? Because there has to
Yeah,
be some redeeming quality to you. And it gets to a point, I don't want to say too much, but it's man, if you don't make the right call here,
yeah,
and
right. Yeah, and really the redemption or what as close as we get to redemption with him, it comes through Arno. So this young kid who lied about his age and got to the army. He's like I think maybe 14, uh, and this kid is almost too young and naive to realize what a what a terrible person Bagger is, and Bagger keeps trying to make him go away. And
yeah,
most of the soldiers would just be like, "Well, you're a jerk. I'm going to stay away from you." But the kid just doesn't get it. And so he keeps coming back and he kind of wears down Bagger. And Bagger pretends like he hates this kid, but he can't help it. He starts to like this kind of little kid who keeps hanging around him. And so the relationship that has the potential to change Bagger isn't him and the angel, it's him and Arno, this kid.
Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. So, um, Mr. Krause, like, would you be okay with reading to us the that first chapter of the book?
Yes, I will.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is
This is a rare treat because I don't usually read.
oh really? Oh my God. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
No, it's fine. And I'll since you can't see the pages for those who are listening, yeah, as Mike said, the whole book is one sentence.
it. Yeah.
Maybe we didn't mention that,
No,
but
no.
but it's sort of chunked out into these. They look sort of like paragraphs. They're just breaks in the sentence, but you'll sort of notice that it doesn't have the same pace or gait as normal books because it just sort of goes on, and that's to sort of represent how once the wheel of violence that I spoke about sort of begins rolling, it doesn't ever stop. So that I wrote it so that it would mirror the kind of theme. So here I'm going to go. This will just take a few minutes. This is how the book starts. So it starts mid-sentence. It starts with the word "and." So it's as if the sentence has already started. And Cyril Bagger considers himself lucky. He ought to be topped off, gone west, bumped, clicked it, pushing daisies, a new landowner, Napud, just plain dead. Not only dead, but scattered around in globs. For the last thing he saw was a shell dropping on top of him with the noise of colliding freight trains. A Jim Dandy of a shot from Fritzie the Hun. And kind of ironic, seeing how the whole reason Bagger prefers burial duty is artillery shells can't reach this far behind the front line trench. But this shell sure did, the way he always pictures it in dreams, a red skull of fire screaming down, giving him 1 second to think that old Bagger luck has finally run out. And the afterlife, for the brief time he knew it, had been delectable. He was gentled back into the arms and the long, long legs of Mary Louise, the prostitute, on whom he'd lavished all his francs when the butcher birds of the 43rd had been stationed in Vosges. I'm probably saying the French wrong.
No worries.
Pretty, dry, warm, quiet, bloodless Vosges, where every inhale was Mary Louise La Rose Jacqueminot parfum, her rosewater hair and periwinkle powders, every exhale the flutter of her dyed red hair, and the lace whatchamacallits of her lingerie. And so the last thing he wants is someone fucking with him and demanding, "You alive?" To which Bagger responds, "Fuck no." To which the man laughs mirthlessly and pulls him up by the armpits like a breech berth. So Bagger the newborn unseals his eyelids, a crust of mud, oil, and embarrassing tears, and discovers he's being lifted from the burial pit he'd been digging when the mortar hit, now blown to triple its size, and is stacked with triple the dead, all being sprayed with quicklime and hastily carpeted in soil. And Bagger would have been buried alive if not for his sharp-eyed private. He really ought to reward him with a cigarette, but Bagger's distracted by the corpses packed slicked hot on all sides of him. One dead doughboy nearly beheaded by a pelvic bone. Another who bit it collecting his intestines in one of his boots. A third stomped so flat by a shell that his spinal column protrudes from his gaping mouth. And yet Bagger, by his own baffled accounting, is intact all the way down to his little piggies. So how the fuck is he alive when everyone who'd been near him, by the look of it, was exploded, shredded, and scattered? He tries to credit the corpse he'd been carrying. It must have absorbed the shrapnel. But a nagging voice insists it's a miracle, which only pisses him off. He'll be goddamned if he's going to start believing in miracles here in hell. And once his ass is on solid ground, more or less, he realizes this marshy patch of land between the Argonne forest and the river Meuse has fallen quiet. And there's nothing more suspicious. A western front, quiet is tetchy. One side always gets itchy and opts to bleed a few hundred more men over a few inches of land so ruined only a maniac would want it. And so Bagger sits up with vision a swirl and chews away the filthy pelt of air the pigeon gray smoke and the eyeball white fog. And beyond the hills of diarrheal mud and the pappy craters from whence those hills were upchucked, Bagger sees trucks and carts and wheeled guns crunching east. Looks like the whole fucking U.S. First Army, 3rd Corps, 43rd Division has vacated the scene with the likely exception of Bagger's lowly Company P, forever dangled like a gonorrheal dick from the brigade's leftmost flank. And Bagger feels for his haversack, still there, and extracts his Bible and opens it and stuffs his nose into the gutter and inhales, doesn't give a fuck about kings and shepherds and carpenters and prophets, but the damp protean smell of the book's red leather and the woody scratch of its onion skin pages, each one half mooned by his father's finger stains, has a smelling salt effect on Bagger, has since he was a kid. It brings him back to the cramped study over the church where Bishop Bernard Bagger labored on sermons, back when Cyril's heart, now filled with smoke, was filled with what must have been hope. And it's only through the motions of inhaling that Bagger feels a brittle tightness. His face is glazed in dried blood, clearly not his own, and he orders himself not to imagine whose. It's best when blood has no deeper meaning than rain, especially in the Argonne where so few trees remain to block the October wind that flash dries blood so rapidly to your skin. And while there's no telling which boy bled this blood, what kind of blood is a different matter. 14 days into this cyclone of cartilage and lead, Bled has developed a sommelier palate for the tart fizz of brachial blood, the fudgy sorghum of femoral, the meaty sludge of heart wounds, the rancid reek of any gut juice at all, and the warm salt lick of arterial blood he now licks from his lips. And it's good the Bible is here to push him through it. Bagger takes a loud, greedy sniff, sinuses bathed in the aromatic nostalgia of comfort and solace, then reluctantly pockets the book and sticks fingers into his ear holes to clear out the creamy plugs of mud and blood. In this trench world, hearing is so much more vital than seeing, and the world's noises whoosh back, and Bagger catches his breath at a rubbery wail that overrides everything. Another Minenwerfer dropping, the same kind of shell that ripped his fellow barriers to cutlets. Oh no, oh shit, but hold on, wait, no, this is different. Less a wail than a shriek. No rival to a mini on a decibel level, but with an edge that chisels through the end times grumble at a pitch he's never heard. And though there's plenty of attack machines and extremists out in no man's land, their death moans are as predictable as hinges, while this shriek is organic, as alive as Mary Louise's pleased moans or Bishop Bagger's stentorian damnations. It could be male or female, human or animal, but whatever it is, it's dying, dying slow, dying loud, ripple after glissading ripple of agonized lament. And Bagger, already weighed down in mud and blood, further heavies in the dreary certainty that the shriek won't ever end, just like the war won't ever end, like the carnage won't ever end. It's a sentence in a book, careening without periods, grasping with too many commas, a sentence that once begun can't ever be stopped, a sentence doomed to loop back on itself to form a terrible black wheel that sooner or later will drag each and every person to their grave.
Damn. Wow. Thank you so much. Like it's folks, it's amazing to hear a book read out loud. I think it's even more amazing to hear it when you hear it from the very person who wrote it. So Mr. Kraus, thank you so very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Super cool. Amazing. Um, folks, the book is called Angel Down. It's out. It's been out since the end of July. And I will have links to both how you can buy it in the UK and how you can buy it in the US. Um, folks, if you're into World War One or if you're just into a hell of a good story, like please do go out and get Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. Mr. Kraus, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks so much.